Are you a real estate investor looking to sharpen your skills or a newbie looking to become one? You're in the right place. Welcome to Where Should I Invest? Real Estate Investing in Canada with your host, Sarah Larby.
So you obviously have, the ability to take something, convert it, make it 2 units, select your own, tenants, put your own rents in. One of the things I love Ontario, but one of the things I don't love about Ontario is the rules with landlord and tenant. What does that look like for Alberta? Like, what's the upside?
Oh man, I believe that when you invest in a business, which we're going to call it real estate, I think you have to do business where the rules are the best, period. That's why, I live in BC and I don't invest in BC. I have 2 properties in BC and everything's in Alberta. In Alberta, we have no land transfer tax, which is amazing. With the no land transfer tax, you go buy 5 houses, for example, savings of that land transfer tax gets you a 6th house in Alberta. But more importantly, the Landlord-Tenant Act is extremely friendly in Alberta. Like in Ontario, you have to fill out all these forms, these N's and these R's or whatever these forms are in order to evict tenants, and you can't even get them out. Whereas in Alberta, it's a 14-day eviction notice. It's like, here's your notice. If you're not out by day number 15, it's actually day number 16 because the day you serve it on or the day it comes due on doesn't count. So 16 days, I can get a sheriff, a bailiff, and I can seize the property. And so I could have my property back in 20 to 25 days from the time I post a notice. And that's with going to court. In Alberta, we can raise rents once every 365 days, an unlimited amount of money. So as the market goes up, what's going to start happening is we've done it before where there's $200, $300, $400, $500 rent increases because supply and demand. Mm-hmm. Whereas in Ontario, what is it, a 2%? Well, if there's anything right now in BC, it's a 2% increase.
It was 0. This year is 1.2%, and I mean, obviously, it's peanuts. So, but obviously, you can increase it. But what about when things are a little rough with the oil and gas industry, or jobs are not as plentiful? Like, have you had a situation where you had to reduce rents?
Oh yeah, the pandemic. Let's use the pandemic as a classic example. The pandemic happens, we were shitting our pants wondering how many tenants are going to pay rent. We legit had no idea. And it was like a small percentage. We managed 650 properties in Edmonton. And I bet you in any given month, we had 1 to 2% of our tenants not paying rent. Now, a lot of that comes from tenant profiling. It has nothing to do with the job sector. It has nothing to do with oil and gas. It's all about how you place your tenants. If you're doing the right checks and the right screening and picking the right people, you'll never have a problem. If you're renting to people who have, bad credit and, they're credit seekers and they're in the service world, service workers, nothing against service workers at all, like restaurants, there's more risk there than there is, someone who has husband and wife who work, have B+ credit, have a car each, a couple of young kids who go to school in the area. There's less risk with them than a 22-year-old, for example. Nothing against 22-year-olds, but a lot of that has to do with your tenant profiling and how well you screen your tenants versus the type of industry they're in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was more, I was curious because you're obviously raising it, when needed, the rents year over year, but there's likely, I think it's just a little bit different than Ontario, a little bit more of, a common thing out in Alberta, that the rents can also come down, which I don't think we've had in Ontario, maybe, even though in the pandemic, other than maybe some Toronto condos at the very, very beginning that moved in price a little bit downwards. I think the majority of everybody else likely kept the rents at that price, and then they've obviously gone up a bit since then. So I think it's just
even during the pandemic, we didn't drop rents. We didn't drop them hundreds of dollars. So in the worst time in the world in the worst time of investing in my world. So in the last 20 years, the pandemic was the most stressed. Mm-hmm. And not just for me, but all of, once again, we have 400 clients that we manage properties for. And out of our whole portfolio that we manage properties for, maybe $25-$50, some rents got reduced. But for the most part, we are able to hold firm
Very good.
or hold steady with our rents.
Mhm.
So, but do they drop in Alberta? Absolutely. So what happens in Alberta when vacancy rate goes up? So right now our vacancy in Tilt is like 3.5%. So in 2016, in 2017, I think got about 6.5%. So it was a little bit higher. So we can get a little bit more creative because I know I can get my rents back up. Whereas in Ontario, you guys tend to hold a little bit firmer because you can't get your rents back up ever. So a $200 price drop to get that unit filled is going to take you 20 years to get back.
Mhm.
Whereas in Alberta, we sit there and say, okay, if there's 10 other units in the area for rent for 1,800, let's put ours at 1,700. Let's fill it right away. And then in 12 months, we're going to bring it back up or above par, above market, and then we're going to capture it all later. So you do see a little bit more movement over the years, over the year in Alberta. But
Mhm.
the long haul, that's more of a strategy on how to rent it, because once again, we have the ability to drop and pick it back up.
I think that's the big difference, right? Is that if we drop it, it becomes lawful rent. So you don't want to
Yeah.
drop it. If anything, you want to give them like a gift card or something along those lines that has nothing to do with rents, because we just
Yeah.
are still rent controlled already here in the country. Minus the new units though, like as of right now, I mean, this could all change depending on who's in power. But once Kathleen Wynne left and Ford came in, the one good thing that he did was, remove the rent control starting November 15th of 2018. So anything that was a new unit built after that is not subject to rent control. So
Yeah.
again, I mean, I'm sure,
Huge.
that's going to change at some point, but that was a huge help. But I do want to go
But the
back.
but the problem with that is there's there's no rent control, so you can raise the rents unlimited.
Once a year, 90-day notice.
Yeah, sweet. So
Market. Yeah.
so like as far as a strategy, a management strategy, that's ginormous. Because if you have a place that comes up for rent and there's 3 others for rent, you can lower your rent. You're just eating 12 months. And then if you go into a situation 12 months later where you have 0% vacancy, now your rent increase goes up. That tenant's not going to move because they have nowhere to go.
Mhm.
And if you depending on your tenant profile, like I like families, I love families, I love young couples. It's really hard to pick up and move kids. It's really hard. If it's just a boyfriend, girlfriend, they can pick up and move overnight.
Mhm.
And it's really hard to move kids, right? Because they're connected and they're dialed into the area. So depending on your tenant profile, there's very little movement anyway. So it's a great strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Alberta seems interesting, and you said it's not really a burr, and I do agree with you. I feel like with the 3 letters of the burr, like you'd still buy, you still renovate, you still rent, you just can't really necessarily refinance off the top. But when you said that suited, properties work well, like you're essentially converting. You're just not necessarily, getting the lift to be able to refinance and reuse the same money into the next deal. You're likely just keeping it in the deal once the
Correct.
done, or you're just buying.
Yeah.
It's already done as a 2 unit.
Like burrs work. It's just not as lucrative, and it's a little bit different than what people are seeing in Ontario or the Lower Mainland or the Okanagan.
Yeah.
Like you can go buy it, renovate it, rent it, refinance it. A couple problems with the refi is if it doesn't actually hit the market, there's not a lot of comps on the market. It's not like
Mhm.
you go to Ontario and everyone's doing these things, so you just have so much, so many comps, right, for appraisers to use. One of the challenges that we have with this approach in Alberta is getting the comps. Like there's just the appraisers, just no comps, especially if it's not on MLS.
Mhm.
So that's a challenge. So burrs do work. You can't necessarily pull out as much money as you'd like. So, so say that end value of the house is $500,000. A normal purchase, you'd have to put $100,000 down on it. Which is fine. So now you do this burr, maybe instead of 100, maybe you're getting it for 80, or 85, so you're saving 10, 15 grand, but so it still works. You're just not able to pull out as much money as you think.
So is it probably easier to just buy an already suited property on the market?
Yeah.
And whether a property management company puts the tenants in there or whatnot, then you can kind of just more of a buy and hold for cash flow type of deal.
Yeah, like Alberta right now is pure buy and hold. It's a pure buy and hold strategy. You start looking at the fundamentals of Alberta. You look at oil. You look at, if anyone's thinking, any of your listeners are thinking of investing in Alberta, I'd go follow Jason Kenney on social media. Jason Kenney's our premier. Love him or hate him, it doesn't really matter. But the truth is, on social media, he's pumping everything that he's doing. Like, he's getting ready for a new election. He's getting ready to run again. He wants to get back in. His popularity is at an all-time low. He is pumping the economy. Alberta has the lowest taxes for new business, for any business. The oil and gas sector is getting huge discounts to invest there. So there's a lot of the energy, the new energy sector, because they're trying to move into electric energy. So there's all kinds of stuff that's happening there. So you start following Jason Kenney, it's like, oh my God, there's a lot of stuff happening.
Thanks so much for listening to Where Should I Invest with your host, Sarah Larby. Make sure to listen in next time. We'll catch you on the next episode of Where Should I Invest?